All right, so today I wanted to make a video about why I don't use tabs and what I do instead. This doesn't want to be ever, I don't want to have a go at anybody who use tabs or anything like that. I understand there are people that, there are beginners, there are musicians, there are different stages of learning. There are people that just want to do this as a hobby. There are people that want to get into the professional world, or people that are just working professionally to do this for a living. But I want to suggest something that might be more useful for your development as a musician, as a guitarist. And as a matter of fact, when it was time to publish some of my books, I spoke to a few publishers, and they were all saying that having tablature in your books nowadays is industry standard, so to speak. They would never publish a guitar book without tablature, so to speak, unless it was just classical music. Okay, so the reason why I believe that you shouldn't use tablature, apart from maybe the first couple of years of development, and maybe an asterisk for open tunings that are not the standard open tunings, like drop D, guitar down to E flat, standard tuning down to E flat, open A, open D, open G. Those are tunings where you can figure things out by ear and by logic. Okay, but I'm talking about open tunings that like completely random. Like Joni Mitchell uses a lot of open tunings that are very strange, and in that case, I would say it's helpful to know how to navigate, even though probably you could just, by logic, you could work out what she's doing even by ear. I would say the main reason why I don't use tablature, and I always suggest my students to try to come off using tablatures as with time, is because tablatures connect your eyes to your fingers. Okay, where music is very much an oral art, is very much an art where you have to connect your hearing. You hear a sound and you have to try to figure out where that sound is on the guitar, whether that sound is something you heard from a recording or it's in your musical imagination. So you're trying to transcribe a melody that you've heard in your head. So let's say you're a songwriter, trying to record, you're trying to come up with something. So not only you have to exercise your musical imagination, but you have to be able to transcribe it on your instrument. Okay, so some people do it by just singing what they hear in their head and then trying to replicate it on the instrument. Obviously, this is a process. This is a process. So the first reason why I don't like tablatures is because I've seen students that only use tablatures, and in a way, traditional notation, like classical piano players or classical musicians that only read music, are lacking more the ear training side of things, so to speak. Even though traditional notation exists for a different reason. Traditional notation is to communicate between different instruments. Let's say if somebody wrote a chart, even just a simple melody, in traditional notation, pretty much any instrument can read that. I can give that to a piano player, to an oboe player, to a trombone player. They all could read it. If I wrote that in tablature, it means nothing to them, absolutely nothing. I can only give it to another guitarist, if that guitarist is playing a standard tune guitar, obviously. So the reason behind traditional notation is that of sharing your music with other musicians, which nowadays we obviously can do more with recording and sending a memo. Obviously, these traditional notation has existed for hundreds of years. So another reason why I don't like tablature is very rarely it contains rhythmic notation. A lot of the stuff that you find online, a lot of the stuff that my students give me as tablature is just a bunch of numbers. If you've never heard, if the tablature is not accompanied by a recording of the tune, you have no idea. You would just you'd be just playing random notes on the fretboard. Okay, so that's another reason why I rarely just give tablature. There is some more advanced tablature where they add the stems with 8 notes, 16 notes, and all that stuff like that. But those are quite, in my experience, those are quite rare. So as I was saying, I would suggest for you to try to get away from tablature within time. So, or to use tablatures as you're learning, but to hone the skill of transcribing from recordings or just from yourself singing or from, so trying to train, because obviously at the end we play with our senses. So we look at the fretboard, we hear a note, we're trying to, by shapes, by memory, by feel. So try to hone away. That includes all those senses. But the most important one, because again, music is an oral art, is trying to replicate a sound that you've heard. Okay, so it's trying to find a note, and the best way to do that, actually, the two best ways to do that, are by transcribing from a recording and by transposing. Okay, so you're trying to think and find that note in a different key on the guitar. But transcribing nowadays is really easy. Like, I mean, the generation before me, they only had vinyl. That the only way to transcribe for them is either, to learn tunes for them was either learning from somebody, having a friend that knew that tune, or they're trying to figure out a recording. There was no such thing as like video tutorials or tablatures. Occasionally, maybe for classical music, you would have charts. Before, so for jazz and pop, you'd have to figure it out by yourself. Even in my generation, I had to learn stuff by slowing down, tape to tape. Like I learned Steve Vai tunes by figuring things out. And that taught me a lot. Not only improved my knowledge of the guitar, but my musical imagination. I tried to figure out things that were beyond my knowledge by just trying things out. And I came up with things that maybe weren't exact to the original, but were a way of doing things that I have worked out myself. Nowadays, we're so lucky when I use apps to teach every day. So there are things like Music Speed Changer, where you can, just change the key and change the speed of the tune. We have things like, Reaper Cubase Logic, where I can just loop things and take a little snippet and slow them down. Some are open source. There's just so many products that are, in software that are open source. So another way of doing that, I would say second best, which is still visual, but it's still best in tablatures, is to try and find when you can't do the first, just the transcribing by ear, is to find a YouTube video of a live recording, of a recording where you can see the guitars. At least you can see in which area of the guitar they are. And obviously that's still visual, but you still have that feel, and you can see how he approaches certain things. Okay, that would be second. Once you've tried the by ear only, I would say that's second. Then the last, you should leave the tab as like last resort. So in my 30 years of playing live, I've had my own project. I've been part of bands. I've been part of solo and duos and stuff like that. But most of what I've done is what in England they call depth work, which is you jump in. The guitarist can't do that gig in that evening, and you jump in last minute or with a few days of you have a few days to work out the tunes. That has taught me so much, because I've learned just by ear thousands of tunes, literally thousands of tunes throughout years. And your ears become razor sharp, and you start to recognize chord progressions, what area of the guitar the guitar is playing, where the note is, like the difference between an F played here and there, the different like tonal quality to that note. So you learn to replicate. Even sometimes, you just listen to the tune. If it's a simple tune, you don't even need to touch the guitar. You know exactly what it is. Just because music is very repetitive. It's based on patterns. It's based on the same thing over and over, basically. So, and only rarely I find myself to go and find something, or either a tutorial or and again, usually it's for open tunings or techniques that are things that I don't recognize instantly, which is very rare. A few students have suggested, they said that they bought things like, ear training products, like, books or online tutorials, like there is that Rick Beato, at the moment is quite popular, that he has like an ear training course. I've not personally used that. I've used things, obviously like solfege books, and there was one that I used about years ago called Training the Ear by Armand Donnellian, which I think is from the Manhattan School of Music. I've obviously used the Berkeley books. That's the college I went to years ago. But then again, those are more to recognize like intervals, scales, chord qualities, chord extensions in chords, which is all great. It's all great, but I think ultimately you just want to transcribe and trying to figure out things, even if you don't call them with their own name, so to speak. So yeah, to summarize, I would say that try, again, this is not against using tabs, especially if you're a beginner or a hobbyist, but try at the same time to develop a sense of of transcribing a sound and finding where that sound is on the guitar. Because trust me, that over a long period of time, it's very painful to begin with. Every student that I taught, they all say this is very difficult. But after a few weeks, they were like, I can't believe I haven't done this before, because it's something that there's a steep learning curve, but once you get into that, you just don't go back to, I rarely try and find transcriptions or tutorials for these days after years of doing this. And I want to say it takes about between 6 months to a year to become comfortable and started to recognize, chord progressions and melodies and where they are on the guitar. If it's a note is bent or there's a hammer on or pull off, stuff like that. It takes a bit of time, but by slowing down which are things you can do really easily this day. Even on YouTube, you can get, maintaining the pitch by slowing down the original recording. You can do really easily. So yeah, I strongly suggest that. Again, leave a comment if you have anything to say about this, and if you obviously share this video if you found that it was of any help to you, and subscribe, and get in touch if you want. Take care. Bye-bye.